Well, it's not good news for Rishi Sunak, but you don't get a sense, talking to people in Downing Street, that they're pulling their hair out there. They'd seen that the DUP was in difficulty over this, and Jeffrey Donaldson, the leader of the DUP, is not using the most strident possible language that he could use in this context, in which DUP leaders have made a bit of a speciality over the years. The other thing that means that Downing Street isn't putting its hair out is because the vote on Wednesday on the framework, on the Stormont Brake, isn't on a knife edge. People in the top of government were saying they thought they'd kept the number of Tory rebels comfortably below 20 when they were talking about this. Now, some of those Tory rebels, potential rebels, have said, oh, we'll wait and see what the DUP do. But the DUP leader is not exactly giving a rousing battle cry to those potential rebels, as you pick up in his tone in this clip here.
So this is you rejecting the framework?
Well, this is us giving a clear indication to the government that insufficient progress has been made, that there remain key areas of concern for us, and they need to be addressed.
To the framework, you're not supporting it?
Well, our position is very clear. Last week I outlined a number of key concerns that we have. We will continue to engage with the government to seek progress on those areas.
So what's going on here? Basically, in the DUP, you have a divided party. Jeffrey Donaldson, not thrilled with the framework, but wants to carry on the conversation about it, and is very keen to go back into power sharing in Stormont. But other people inside the party, including some of its MPs, are not keen on power sharing at all. And one of those MPs described the framework agreement as putting a ribbon on the original protocol agreement, which they rejected. The prize for Downing Street is not so much whether the DUP can come on board and support this framework, but whether power sharing can be set up again. And they hope that over time they can decouple the two issues of the framework, the reworking of the protocol, and this issue of going into power sharing. But what today kind of shows you is the risk there is that the DUP prioritises staying united over anything else and moves at the pace of the slowest ship in the convoy, the people who are most reluctant to go into Stormont. And today looks like Rishi Sunak may have to contend with that possibility.
Gary, thanks very much. Well, we did ask a number of DUP MPs and members of the Northern Ireland Assembly to come on, but no one was available. The UK government's Northern Ireland office also declined our request for a minister to talk to us. However, earlier I did speak to Sam McBride, the Northern Ireland editor of the Belfast Telegraph and Sunday Independent, and I began by asking if the DUP's decision had come as a surprise.
As time has gone on, as they've realised what's actually in the detail of this, that some of what the government has said simply does not stand up, there has been a really significant hardening of their position. So if Sir Jeffrey Donaldson wanted to go back into Stormont, wanted to be moderate here, wanted to compromise, as many people think he does want to do, he's in a position where he finds it almost impossible to do that right now.
So is it the view, do you think, of the DUP and some Eurosceptics that this has been oversold by Rishi Sunak?
The text of the legal aspects of this very significant UK-EU deal do not match what the government said about them. Rishi Sunak said that there would be essentially no customs border in the Irish Sea. That is simply incorrect. There is a customs border, albeit much more porous, much more open, much softer than previously was there. But rather than say that, rather than be straightforward with the public about this, I think there's a real danger that this government is starting to repeat what Boris Johnson's government did around here. They denied there would be any Irish Sea border. They lied about it in Boris Johnson's case, and that had disastrous consequences.
Now, it's interesting in the DUP statement, they talk about continuing to work with government on outstanding issues, which is being interpreted by many people that this is not an outright no. There's still room for manoeuvre.
I think that there is the possibility that the DUP gets something else out of the Prime Minister, out of Rishi Sunak, out of Downing Street. Much harder to get out of the EU, and so it will be tinkering around the edges of this. And I think the real question now is not whether the DUP backs this deal. I think that ship has sailed now. I think the question is whether the DUP, despite rejecting this deal, might still find itself back in Stormont.
That was exactly my next question. What does this mean for Stormont and the return of devolved government?
I think that when you look at this, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson is somebody who believes in devolution. His party, for the most part, still believes in devolution. The real problem here is their voters. They're indifferent to Stormont. Some of them see it as corrupt. Some of them see it as out of touch. Some of them don't like the fact that Sinn Féin are now the top dogs in Stormont. And so there are lots of reasons why they're totally unenthusiastic about getting back in there. And at the same time, the thing that they do care about, the Irish Sea border, it's clear to them the more that they look at this, even though they don't really fully understand it yet, the more they look at it, the more it's clear that that hasn't gone.
In the short term, does that completely rule out any return to Stormont?
Under the rules of the Good Friday Agreement, if one of the two big parties doesn't play ball, there is no devolution. That's the reality here. And so we have the irony, I suppose, of people coming to Northern Ireland, the US President, former Prime Ministers, former Taoiseach, coming to Belfast in a few weeks' time to celebrate the Good Friday Agreement. The very significant likelihood is that there will be no Good Friday Agreement in a functional sense at that point in terms of its most obvious devolved institutions. And the reason for that is because the Good Friday Agreement allows a single, fairly small regional party to keep the entire government down. Lots of people in Northern Ireland think the time has come to get rid of that, but that's a huge call because you're there dismantling the fundamental architecture that was put in place in 1998.
Sam McBride, got to leave it there, but thanks very much for talking to us this evening.